We're good.
Okay, did you say we're live?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our January baseline General Assembly. We have a pretty big group here. I'm not sure if you can see everybody who's off camera, but we have folks from different companies and just others in the community joining us as well today. And we'll go through our normal General Assembly updates, and then we'll have an open floor with any leftover time. So first and foremost, handing it over to Andreas to give us an update on the standard.
Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. Hope everybody is safe, healthy, and the new year has kicked off well. So as far as the standard is concerned, we're still in a bit of a cleanup mode, some clarifications, nothing really that impacts requirements. Anybody wants to follow along, there are a couple of open PRs and issues that are currently being discussed, primarily raised by Charles from the EA. We're working through those. Again, we're niggling at the edges here. We have our next call on tomorrow, actually, at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. GMT. So please join. One of the things, besides our usual PR and issues review, is going to discuss next work items that we should be looking at in terms of either improve the current version of the standard or / anything that we should be adding going forward. We're still waiting to get guidance from the PGB on the actual requirements for this standard to become a draft standard, and what the requirements are to go from a draft standard to a full project standard, because only then can we go ahead and submit the standard to the main OASIS body for it to become an OASIS standard. So there is work that needs to be done by the PGB that is still pending. John, since you're in that body, it would definitely be helpful if that would be the focus of in the early part of the new year. That's it from my side. Any questions?
All right. Thank you so much for your update, Andreas. And next, an update from our outreach team. So Mark and Melanie, I'll hand it over to you.
Excellent. Outreach has been steadily working for the past month. Really starting to put together a lot of the content so that we can have it optimized for when people learn all about baseline protocol. This is how they can go ahead and get started. What we want to do is create a way that they are going to be able to almost really avail themselves of a lot of the capabilities and really the use cases, specifically within real world application. So to that end, we are completely revamping our website, especially to include a section, how to get baselined. So people who want to find out a little bit more information about how they can really start that process. And as going through it a couple of times, we've found out that it's deceptively simple as to how you can actually, it does not take much to get up and baseline. If you want to. Now, if you want to add extra functionality, that may take a little bit of extra time, but as far as for the core focus. This is how we can get you up and baselining in practically no time at all. So also that end, we're also refining the pitch deck as far as how to really grab the audience. Right now, we're working on everything pretty much as a single deck, and then we will start to really distill it a little bit further. To kind of focus on those areas that probably need a little bit more of attention, and then really get a clear picture of what it is, what it isn't, and how it can be used, and how it can derive real value within a real world application. So all of that should be finished by the end of the month, really. And we've had several working sessions moving along. So that's really where we are as far as enablement. What we want to do is we want to, you only get one chance to get it right. And so we want to avail ourselves of getting it correct the first time. Many of us are veterans of a lot of blockchain projects. And so we have a lot of well-meaning mistakes that we can draw upon. So our focus is we want to be able to have impactful content that really speaks to what's being heard as opposed to what's just being said. So.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Mark. And just to piggyback off of that, if anybody in this group or watching would like to join our enablement sessions as we start having a more final draft ready, it'd be cool to even have some of you take a look and give us some pointers and kind of tear it apart for us so we can get a few more sets of eyes on it. So please let me know if you'd be interested in doing that. And thank you for the update, Mark. And over to Carol for sponsorship updates.
Okay, thank you. I apologize for not having a working camera this morning, but of course, our big news from the holidays, I hope everybody saw, was that SAP came on as a baseline sponsor. So thank you to Myron on the TSC for making that happen, for John, as always, for all the work that you put into all the conversations that we had with them. But I think it's really a game changer, and we had a press release out on it, and we're excited to continue to promote that and build on that with some other companies. We're also excited about everything the outreach group is doing in terms of the website with Get Baselined and the use cases. I think that's going to help broaden our sponsorship base and bring in some more companies. I've been working with John and Sonal about, reaching out to the channel software kind of companies, trying to re-engage, get Salesforce, Oracle, and smaller and larger companies involved, because, baselining is more than just blockchain now. So I think we can really be effective in broadening our outreach. So exciting things ahead.
Awesome. Thank you. And next up, some TSC updates. I know there hasn't been a technical steering committee session since the last General Assembly, but Samrat, do you want to give us some words on that?
Sure. So I think we are planning a TSC session and the roadmap design thinking sessions for as the first matter of to pick up in 2022. I think that's the biggest thing that I'm looking forward to right now. And of course, there are tons of enablement sessions which have been on our agenda for a while now. So I don't have any other updates as of now. John, do you want to add something here?
Forgive me, I'm struggling with power outage here and trying to keep everybody up online. So I'm less than attentive, but just consider me your production manager today. Okay. I think there's a lot of exciting stuff going on right now. Lots of things about to pop. Obviously, it's really great to see people like Bill Gleim here, and our move towards really focusing on baselining being a good word to kind of encompass multi-party, verified multi-party workflows. Whether that, and honestly, I had a really good meeting with the other day with Richard Gennell Brown from who, and they're approaching the matter very differently, but for once we were able to kind of work together because He's been on Quarter and I've been on Ethereum all these years, but we're still good friends. And their approach is not ZK, but as we've been discussing in the standards team, it's not like you have to use CK or you're not baselining, right? You use the right tool for the right job, and the point is we need a standard for not for internal system integration, as a lot of workflow management has been up till now, but multi-party. I even want to see us maybe commission a like a Gartner or Forrester type study that breaks out multi-party workflows from just workflow management in general, which is somewhere between a $6 billion and $50 billion industry right now, depending on what you include in the package. So how much of that is multi-party versus, hey, we just company and we need to integrate some systems is sort of hard to find. And even Richard said that it's hard to find that kind of data, and yet we all know viscerally, right? I mean that especially in the world of supply chain, that there is a real need to get away from just trading email around and slips of paper and phone calls. So that's kind of where we're at, and I think we're going to see a lot of influx. I know that it's so exciting to have SAP officially sponsoring with money and real activity, real support, real development. And I don't think we get to say who's coming next, but I guess I did hear Samrat that we're pretty close, right? And another major sponsor.
Absolutely.
I think they're just going to start tumbling away now that we've really defined and made it simple to understand what this is about and why it matters to everybody. Sorry, I'm grandstanding there, Sonal. I'll stop.
Thank you. So thanks for the update, John and Samrat. It'll be nice to have our road mapping session, because I think it's going to feed into some new baseline improvement proposals, work for our core devs. It's going to be the ideas for more grants to come and just kind of pave the way for the direction for 2022. So looking forward to those lengthy sessions by the TSC. And next, I will give a brief update on our grant work. So
May I just step in here for 1 second? So
Yes.
it's like just John, minor correction. Baselining requires a zero knowledge proof of correctness. So that's you can have different types of zero knowledge proofs, but it does require that is R225 is the output from a work step. Execution must be a valid zero knowledge proof of correctness of the input generated by the BPI executing the work step.
Fair enough, Andreas, and that is the current state of play, although I'm quite hopeful, and I'm sure you'd agree that an amendment is underway to and I would certainly support it, that we slightly widen that matter, but that's for another day.
Whatever the zero knowledge proof is, as long as it's a zero knowledge proof.
Yeah. So I think we'll have a lot of interesting conversations about that. I'm certainly a big fan of zero knowledge, but I think that baselining, and I don't think the General Assembly is where we get to have this out. But I'm listening hard to folks like Mehran and others, and I don't think that we necessarily. My point of view is that, personal point of view is that. That we're about a wider range of solutions to the problem than simply one form of ZK. But we can have that out. I know that an amendment is going to be proposed, because if nobody else does it, I will.
All right, we can park that discussion for a future time. So back to our grant updates. So really quickly, we want to cover a little hiccup that we had in December for our 2022 grants. So John, will you have bandwidth right now if you wanted to quickly touch on that?
I'm sorry, say again.
The 2022 grant update.
Oh, yeah. Very good news. I think there is a party on this call who can confirm it, but I don't want to out them unless they want to come forward. But we have a verbal confirmation of a $50,000 match to the grant program for 2022. And I can confirm that my budget has been approved and we have a grant. We'll be putting in certainly 50,000 and if not more going forward, with some of that coming in January. And we will be putting to the PGB tomorrow night or tomorrow afternoon a proposal for an amendment to how we manage the grant such that we can widen the grant funding sources. And Sonal, I think, is working at, this is not a promise. This is live stream, so I got to be careful. This is not assured, but we're seeing if the open collective system that we use for this is ready to accept crypto. That is that would be great, but it's not certain that that's capable yet, or even if it would be something that we can pass through the PGB as a policy. That said, we're working on it. I think we can report that. Everybody, get out your wallets. It's time to start filling up the grants thing. I don't think anybody would disagree that the way Sonal in particular has managed the grants and has managed the project teams on the blips has been outstanding. I love the idea that, in general, if you're getting a grant and you're doing a blip project, that you do it on camera together in pair programming sessions. Those were wonderful. I think the thing that we haven't nailed quite yet is the packaging of the outputs of these projects into really big bangs. So I think we're hiding some of our stuff under a bushel, as some might say. Does everybody in the world know about the Excel projects, plural? Does everybody in the world know about the wonderful stuff that Luis and Boris did around ZK libraries for bonds? No. Does everybody in the world know about Battleship? Not yet. And so we've got some work to do on just making sure that each of these is well publicized, and that we bang the drum when these things happen. So I think that's something we have to do work on. Finally, I will report that I made a mistake. When Sonal came on, I did not inform her that the system through which we pay money for these grants takes a surcharge. And so we spent $100,000. But we did not have exactly $100,000 to spend because of that. So we went over a little bit. We got it covered, but in the interest of transparency, I want everybody to know that we went over by a small amount. The transaction fee amount, and so it's going to get covered. But I have to make a culpa on that, and that's all I'll say about that. I think that's. Did I miss anything?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
I missed the thing where I said everybody get out their wallets and start. Actually, I will put in the chat here, not on the YouTube chat. I will put, if I can find it, the link to where you can actually top up the grant money. And if you're a sponsor, you can do that right away. If you're not a sponsor, wait until after the PGB meeting. We're going to have a language change that would allow, if the PGB agrees to it, allow non-sponsors to add to grant money, but under certain conditions, like some of that money will actually go to sponsorship. So stay tuned on that, but watch in the chat when I find the link, and and if you're on here and you guys want to sponsor, and you're or not a sponsor, but put grant money in, you would be able to.
All right. Thank you. So next, I'll just give a quick core dev update. So we have about 50 core devs who have joined sessions in the last few months, with about 15 to 20 in each session. And in our last session on Monday, we closed up some blips, some baseline improvement proposals where work was complete in the last few weeks. And then we started opening up some new blips and ideas. So blips are open to anybody. If you have any suggestions, thoughts, additions, or just anything you'd like to add and propose for baseline, whether it's to the standards, to examples, to the core packages, please submit a blip and our core dev team and other teams can review and talk about a plan of action and if it's on the roadmap. So we've added some additional blips and our core devs are getting ready to align with the TSC and their roadmap and get working on some valuable contributions for the upcoming year. That's the final update that we have from the General Assembly. Any questions from the group on any updates given? All right, so now we'll just have an open floor. So first I wanted to ask Samlet, I saw your message in the baseline chat, but who are you having on the show this weekend and the Baseline India show?
Yeah, so we're going to be having Sharandar Gupta. He's the head of data analytics at data science. And of course, not one person should be heading this, but yeah, he is. So at Apollo Tires, which is a very, very large tire manufacturing company. They've also made a lot of acquisitions. So yeah, finally, this is a guest I was chasing since about a couple of months. Finally, we have him. And it's also going to be my 25th episode here. So yay.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. In fact, one very interesting discussion came up this afternoon. I was talking to the NASCOM folks about their upcoming events and, a general catch-up chat with the head of the NASCOM North in India. So she has now taken up an additional responsibility. She's now become the head of inclusion and diversity. So now they are creating a framework for all of Indian tech companies on inclusion and diversity. And she said, Samrat, it's a weird idea, but can we use baselining in or zero knowledge in and incorporate something like that in inclusion and diversity? I said, oh, you know what, this is connecting to very far off subjects, but yeah, why not? Let's think about it. Let's brainstorm. I didn't know that this will intrigue me so much, but after that small conversation, it's sort of clung in my head that can we in some way have this is more relevant for DAOs. I told her that on the call as well, that it may not be relevant for boards, regular boards. There are so many regulations controlling regular companies, but DAOs, on the other hand, it's just people behind wallets. You don't know, it can be companies, it can be individuals behind wallets. So can there be any regulations around, or can there, is there any way that we could have inclusion and diversity frameworks implemented on DAOs? Now imagine, it's just a very, very vague, high level concept, but yeah, happy to hear your thoughts.
Are you asking the floor something?
Oh, the answer is,
sorry, say it again.
Unless you're doing KYC, you can't, right? Unless you identify exactly whether they're a member of a minority or particular gender, not sex, right? Difference between sex and gender, right? A lot of people get that confused. So yeah, that's hard. You need to identify yourself in order to be all right. So I think that the goal of DAOs is to because of the pseudonymity or anonymity is that there's not going to be discriminatory behavior because you simply don't know who you're interacting with.
So Samrat, let me give you the flip side to that, right? Okay, anonymity or pseudonymity. So you don't really know if you're being inclusive or not because you don't know who's behind a public key, right? And two, in a democracy, everyone gets one vote, every individual gets.
in a DAO, first of all, is there an individual behind a public key? Is there one individual with many public keys? And who tokens, you buy your way in with tokens. So more tokens you have, the more votes you have. So there is inherent limitations to democracy and inclusion in DAOs. So, I mean, you hear a lot about the things that for inclusivity, and these are the things that I'm giving you that are fundamentally against inclusivity, right? The caveats, from the same, qualities of DAOs. It goes both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's my thought as well. It's sort of on one side it could be by design these are inclusive because there can't be any discrimination, but on the other side, have we made sure that we have enough representation?
How can you have representation if you don't even know who it is?
Exactly.
You don't know, right?
And then that brings us back to Andrea's point, which was, you have to do KYC. Anyway, but just that thought came up, and she was super keen on discussing that with me. She's been watching the show, by the way, John and my both shows. So they are still following our our progress, and I'm sure we'll get slots in this year's NASCOM events as well. And by the way, they're open to sponsorships anytime.
Yeah. Well, and also like one thing let's remember is DAOs are probably the first iteration of organizations, on the blockchain, right? But there could be many more, So again, it's an open field, right? I mean, you might have to dispense with some aspects of pseudonymity to attest to inclusion, right? Which some people might find very uncomfortable, especially in the crypto community where, pseudonymity is taken pretty seriously. But I think there's a lot of space for innovation in that space, decentralized organization types other than DAOs.
Interesting.
And for what it's worth, a person, an organization can be a legal person. Which is an interesting concept. Depending on the jurisdiction, of course. But for example, the U.S. Supreme Court in its decision about election funding has ruled that organizations are a legal person. So that's an interesting concept, but it's like, so just saying that there's a variety of interpretation, especially when you then bring in disparate legal frameworks. The challenges compound rather than flatten out. I wanted to
Andreas, you have work being done on your house, or are you kicking the back of your desk again?
No. Sorry, there are workers in the house. I just wanted to bring up one point around grants. So it's like there are some, it's like everybody again going around with a tin cup. It's important because there is work that we're with has been discussed to be sponsored, especially around wallets and the integration of the current sort of like open source wallets around the ECDSA key management, the famous BIP 39 and BIP 44 work or proposals, Bitcoin improvement proposals that have turned into open source wallets, but there's a lack of identity in there. However, there's great work within the W3C that has focused on creating wallet interfaces for things like DIDs and verifiable credentials on the one hand. So that's an interesting piece of work that we should be doing, because we're baseline for focusing on organizations, there needs to be some identity management in there that goes beyond companies specific X509s, which are primarily reliant on third-party certificate authorities, also very often for verification. So we don't want that, because that adds additional complexity. So we need to be able to manage all the things that we need around demonstrating identity through and proving it in one place, aka one wallet. And then we also Luis can attest to the challenges once we're talking about zero knowledge proofs, especially if we're talking about ZK snarks and ZK starks. We have to deal with another family of curves, namely the EDDSA curves, which are very different from ECDSA. So that is also that is also an interesting challenge. So look out for some RFPs around that once we have established a certain bucket of grant money. And I know it's very near and dear to Ori Steele's heart from Transmute. They have done excellent work in the W3C there. Maybe he can talk 2 minutes about that. That would be great.
Sure, I can speak sort of briefly about it. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
So I think wallet interoperability is one of those core blockers for the adoption of the technologies we're all really excited about here. In particular, because wallets hold capabilities to move cryptocurrency, capabilities to prove identity, capabilities to hold various different kinds of credentials. And wallet interoperability, or their lack thereof, contributes to the furthering of data silos and the sort of entrenchment of established identity providers in ecosystems where there might be a desire to improve privacy or transparency or accountability. So specific to the technologies at hand, one of the most important factors regarding wallet interoperability is the ability to use keys in multiple different contexts, but from a consistent experience. So the cryptocurrency community is familiar with the mnemonics. Andreas mentioned some of the standards, the Bitcoin Improvement Protocol, BIP44, BIP39, the use of mnemonics inside of the Ethereum community. And at Transmute, we've been working with those same technologies in the decentralized identity and verifiable credential spaces. And all of that work, it's all open source. It's Apache 2, it's, powering SideTree and various other open source products floating around the internet. But I think that there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration from the cryptocurrency or blockchain communities, especially at this layer, because we all have the same cryptographic primitives that we need to use. Hopefully that's enough of a preamble for why wallets are so important.
Any follow-up comments on that? Well, thanks for sharing with us, Ori. That's very useful to hear what's going on at Transmute, but also how it ties into the ideas that Andreas was posing. So since we have an open floor, any other topics, questions, thoughts from the group here, any updates from what some people are working on in their outside of baseline? John, I see you next in the queue. Go ahead.
A couple thoughts. One is that we have, it would be really great if somebody could step up We had a buddy doing this last year for a time, Kyle Ellicott. You might remember, but he got busy with other things. It would be great to get a showrunner for the baseline shows. We've I've got kind of a day job. Samara's got kind of a day job. I think Samara, frankly, is doing a better job of this than I am, of really lining up super guests. They don't have to be already baselining. We've got a lot of topics around multi-party workflows that we could be talking to people about. There's just a whole world of people we could be lining up to get on the show. Yeah, I think we'd do a better job of that if we had somebody really focused on it. I could probably find some money for it, but in general, it'd be great to have somebody just kind of being a czar for that, and just spending a little bit of time, just searching for people that would be good to, and keeping the topic alive, so that we don't think very often, we get to like the end of the week and we're like, oh, who's going to be on the show next Wednesday?
Yeah.
When we could just get out in front of it. Yeah.
John, is your
I
intention for
think we've
that
done
czar,
great. I'm sorry?
I was saying, is your intention for that czar to be someone that actually does like the interviewing of that guest, or is just the person that's compiling a list of guests on a
I guess I was thinking, just like setting up guests to come on. If they wanted to be interviewers, I have no problem with that at all. I'd love that. But if not everybody wants to do the camera work, so we've got that kind of in a rhythm. But yeah, like getting more and more notable folks on the on the call, and maybe when we get really good, regularly setting up prep, so that we know what questions we're going to be asking, that sort of thing. It'd be nice to do that.
Some research as well. I think that's something which I probably spent 15 minutes on before shows on particular industries that we're picking up, and any key news or data that could be used for conversations while we are chatting with the guests. I think it'll just add more depth. You're right, John. I totally agree with that.
The other subject, if I can piggyback on this a bit, is, so I'll just leave that out there and see if anybody responds and gets excited about that gig. I could certainly see, if somebody did a good job of that, opportunities being made for them in a variety of good ways. We'll see how that works out. So we'll see if somebody steps up. If everybody takes a step backward and only one person doesn't, then we'll appoint them. But the other thing is, I'm in my own company, committing to see at least 20 notable public examples of baselining by the end of the year. I think we do way better than 20. There's Kona and now we're very brave, coming up very early with statements of work about what they were doing. I think we have to find a systematic way as a community to find and report on baselining activity. It's not, for me, it's not about whether my company is doing the project or not, although we will report on those that we are doing. Certainly baselining is the general approach that we're using to build treetrunk.io. Go do treetrunk.io. I'm sorry, I'm shilling. And I think that other company spinouts like Enbridge have a lot of baselining in them. But I'm just as interested if Accenture gets a new gig that was based on baselining requirements, or some other any other service providers. We need to start to report on and celebrate and collect some notion of who's baselining. Any thoughts on how we can do that and how we can organize for it? Oh, I should also say that I'm looking for a very C-level executive. This is on my budget now. Sort of evangelist seller who can go out and make the case for baselining and why they need to put it, why, whether it's, adding that requirement set to transformation projects that they're working on, or ideas that that they could become transformation projects under themselves at the enterprise level, supported by enterprises. I'll be adding that person to my team. And we've already gotten calls from major service providers who are saying, would we like to, well, no, I should say that we had a long call with a service provider that's like, how do we build a baseline practice? I expect we'll see a lot more of that. And so we definitely, I think Mark described how we're going to be giving them, enablement materials for that. My company certainly won't be doing service work, so we'd be handing that off to others, the Envisions and the Accentures of the world. So, there's real opportunity to drum up business and for all of us to take part in that. And I'm grandstanding again, I'm sorry. Please discuss.
Gave us a lot to think about there, but in the chat, Jack Leahy said he'd be willing to lead the effort on planning future baseline shows and coordinating with the group. And Samrat and I also replied and said we'd work with him on that to start planning ahead of time and having.
Count me in.
Yeah, always. Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
To just start lining speakers up. But go ahead, Samrat.
Absolutely. For some reason, I had an impression that Jack volunteered to work on the diversity and inclusion thought paper.
Yeah.
No,
Jack, was that for the shows?
It was
Okay.
for John's
Oh.
call out. It was for John's
Okay.
call out. But Samrat, I'm definitely
Sure.
interested in what I had mentioned around baselining opportunities
All right.
from
All
a
right.
diversity and inclusion perspective as well.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then any comments about anything else John mentioned? Looking for a C-suite level seller to go into major companies and pitch baseline. Any comments or thoughts on any of those points?
Yeah, which email ID can I send my CV to?
No, I think it's something it's certainly the time is right for it. Maybe
Absolutely.
possibly a little bit overdue, but if we have someone that will go ahead and make the investment, that's what we need. I mean, that's the.
Yeah.
I don't think he'd ever consider himself a seller, but let's get Don Tapscott. He's pretty good at this stuff. Actually, I owe him a call. I should call him up.
Don
I
never.
don't think he's for sale, but I don't think he's interested in a job. But getting people like that, right? Somebody who can make the call to a C-level executive at GM or GE or any of these kinds of companies would be good. Just to basically, it's what I used to do, and others used to, people like Nitin Gower and others used to do in the early days of enterprise blockchain, right? We'd go into the Fed. I mean, I remember briefing the Fed in 2015, I think, on what blockchain was. So that sort of thing.
I wound up doing the same thing at about the same time with IRMI, the International Risk Management Institute, because they were just over the moon as far as the potential of blockchain, just in its basic capability of being able to unify disparate siloed architectures, and just the process waste and the operational costs that all of that brings. And little did we know that here we are 6 years later, and we're still distilling even more. So, but you've got a lot of the capabilities that are ready for prime time, that are ready to go to market. And I think a lot of us have been dealing in the theoretical for a long time, that you have to kind of pivot a little bit to say, okay, how do we actually make this happen on the ground? So again, that's one of the big things that we're, that's top of mind for those of us on the enablement team.
I think, Samrat, you're kind of doing that sort of thing, right? By getting people in India on your shows, you're spreading the message. One of the big issues,
Yeah.
really, with generally speaking to someone in the C-suite, is they always associate blockchain with cryptocurrency, right? There is little understanding of the basis of blockchain technology, how it can help multi-party coordination, under conditions of zero knowledge proof, if that is, indeed what you want, right? But I think that's one of the big issues is in trying to get people to understand is get them off the cryptocurrency bandwagon, right? Trying to talk about what blockchain can do as a technology.
Yeah, I agree. And with the new pitch, I think that's something very, very important. That our transition from, and not to use the B word anymore, or use it to the minimum possible extent. I think that's worked for John. I think John, you were talking about it last time, right? It
Yeah,
worked for you. It
I
also
just
worked
think,
in the
yeah,
SAP
such a
deal.
simple, yeah, I mean, it's just a clear story today. I mean, sometimes, it takes a while, and standards standards bodies, as Andreas will attest, and RPGB members like Dan Burnett and Charles Neville, they're old hands at this, and I was discussing this with them the other day. Standards aren't standards bodies are about longevity, not intensity, right? You some days you're moving fast, some days some years it's slower, some years it's faster. And you have to you have to play the long game to determine whether or not you've really made an impact on history. But I think that there are moments when things crystallize, and I feel like that's where I feel very buoyed up by the story, how we tell it, some of the materials that are coming out. Those slide decks can matter. So I mean, having that slide, having a slideshow that really tells the story simply. I mean, to be honest, the tree trunk work that we've been doing just killed it with the slide deck, and I'm getting people calling saying, "Hey, I saw your slide deck on the internet. This makes a lot of sense to me," and we're getting a lot of traction from that. So, once the story crystallizes and people can really grab onto it, if it hits the zeitgeist, you're off to the races. And I think that we have all the math looks right for baselining in that regard, especially with the mess that the supply chain's in and all the urgency around coordinating better between companies. As long as we position well in there, and also I think there's a lot more money coming into the community here that we can use to expand operations and make sure that we're, that baselining is the word people use. I still like the idea. Yeah, send me that invoice, but make sure to baseline it. Right? Yeah, that's we want a word in the history of the annals of technical discourse.
Nice way of putting it, John. Any other comments, questions, anything from the group in our last few minutes here?
We did have someone in the chat on the YouTube. That was Andrew M. Thoughts on baselining the medical industry. For example, he's using the National Health Services in the UK, which certainly is ripe for baseline, especially when it involves the being able to align different parties, as far as data in a framework that you're not allowed to share any sensitive data, particularly health identifying, financial identifying data. Baseline is great for that, but certainly in the U.S., where you have such a huge friction, process environment for just settling and closing a healthcare claim. There is so much, data and paperwork really that has to go back and forth, and really there's no other way to actually do it except make a correction, send it back, receive it again, make any other corrections, back and forth until you're finally synced up. And baseline takes that down and virtually eliminates it. So I would say definitely, healthcare is a huge, base of potential for baselining on that, mainly because it's a different approach. You're not putting in an entirely new software package. You're not putting in an entirely, healthcare ERP system. You're taking your existing plumbing and, you're running what you brought. And this is just a way of synchronizing everybody that is, in a multi-party environment. So yes, to your point, Andrew, of course, there's been a lot of thoughts being put in, especially when it comes to healthcare. It's just trying to figure out, okay, where can you get that toehold that's going to create the most ripple effects to where people can say, yeah, you know what, this has legs and we can actually use this. So finding that particular nut to crack, requires a lot of persistence. Thanks, Tom. Yes, I get that healthcare shield in.
Yeah, I'd say that Consensus Health is, Bill Gleim isn't on anymore. I don't see him. But they're a contributor from the very beginning. They've got a lot of ZK people, Bill notable among them. My point earlier about how I think, we might consider a little more liberal view on the notion of whether ZK is a must rather than a should, or contextualizing that, or creating cases where baselining could be applied, but not necessarily requiring a CCSM or ZK, strictly speaking. That point aside, which I will hold, I think ZK is very much a solid foundation for what we're doing. Just simply maybe not the only thing that would be inside the nomenclature. But that's for the community to decide, and I shouldn't jump the gun. I mean, that's right now our consensus is that it's ZK. That's what's in the standard. If we're going to change it, I should probably do that through channels. So I should say that.
So would there be an advantage to unbundling ZK from the solution set? I
don't know. Unbundling is a big word, but I again, and we are in discussion, so why not? It's transparency. I think that there's been I've been monitoring a lot of sort of bubbling conversation about to ZK or not to ZK, and it seems to me that it's a legitimate conversation to have about what constitutes baselining, and is it a set of things, a set of techniques. Certainly ZK is notable in our current iteration, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. And like I said, Consensus Health is really big into zero knowledge. I should think zero knowledge, especially, and Andreas will point this out, when you're doing bilateral things, you can do it with signatures and hashes very often. And putting those on a CCSM like base ledger is a convenience, perhaps, but it's not strictly necessary. It becomes very necessary when you have to prove attributes of information that is shared to a third party. I think we all agree. Everybody that's been having serious conversations about this agrees with that. So there's context.
One key thing is availability, right? So the big question is when you're relying on a prover to be online for the verifier, for that to work, that is a big ask, and might not always be true, right? So it's like that's why that's why one of the things is that the non-interactive nature of those proofs becomes key, and that's why we're using a CCSM, because that is always on, right? So proofs on a CCSM allow you to non-interactive proofs on a CCSM allow you to for anyone at any time to verify claims that you've made without having to rely on you being available at all times, which is certainly not a good assumption, especially in a multi-party workflow. And I think Ori can talk to that when it comes to like steel imports.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think, I like the attribute of whether it's just a hash or say hash, or whether it's a proper proof. I like the idea of using a CCSM as sort of a bus that says, "Hey, I'm watching here. Oh, I see something. There's a thing there. I'm going to use that as a trigger for something I have to do." And so, if you have like 3 banks and the third bank needs to know that these other 2 banks did a thing without getting the actual data of that thing, that's good for security. They can watch for a proof, and when the proof gets dropped, they can run it, validate it, and then do whatever they're supposed to do. This is a good distributed systems, loose coupling pattern, and it just makes a lot of sense to me. So CCSMs definitely have a bright future, I think, like base ledger and other approaches.
All right. Thank you all who joined this call from different companies, different parts of the community. We're very happy to have you here and hope you join the Baseline show as often as you can. And thank you to our normal studio audience, as well as our viewers on YouTube. And that's a wrap on our January General Assembly for Baseline, and we'll see who we can start queuing up for future shows. Thank you all so much. Have a great week.
Thank you.
Sorry for no tunes going in and out. I still don't have power here, so I'm glad the battery stayed running. Thanks, everybody.
No worries. Thanks, Jeff.
Sing it. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Cheers.